Yo guys, and welcome back to another video, and welcome back to another Doctor Who video. And in today's video, as the title suggests, we're going to be talking about, was Doctor Who Rebooted Season 1 actually that good? Now, I have done reviews on every single episode of Season 1 when it was released, and yes, after some time and a lot of rewatching, etc., my opinions have changed slightly on Season 1. Especially when you can directly compare it on BBC iPlayer with all of Doctor Who's golden era, which I thought it was much closer to upon release, but yeah, I still do think there are some really good things about Season 1, but there are also some glowing problems that, if Doctor Who does not fix, could mean a potential failure on the reboot of the show. And especially as it is a worldwide reboot, this is quite important for the longevity of the show and also just really the future of the show as a whole. But yeah, we're going to be talking about whether Season 1 was actually as good as people have hyped it up to be, and how people have sort of put it. And also, I'll be comparing it to another show which came out quite recently to basically see, compare and contrast with other shows on the market. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty interesting video, and one that I've been wanting to make for quite a while, but just got around to doing it right now, so we're going to be dropping this one right here. But just before we get into this video, please hit that subscribe button if you enjoy lots of Doctor Who content, because I'm going to be bringing brand new Doctor Who content to you guys every single week. Every single Tuesday I'm dropping a Doctor Who video, so if you enjoy this kind of video, or any kind of video like this really, or even videos that are on my channel, then hit that subscribe button right now, and also smash a like on the video as well, because that does really help out with, just pushing the video out there and making sure that more people get to see the content on this channel. I do have a lot of other cool things that are going to be happening in the new year as well. We've got lots of brand new reviews coming very soon, including a prop replica review, which was very expensive. So please subscribe, I'd massively appreciate it. But yeah, also we have some other cool reviews of some Doctor Who figures, some toys, etc. All of that is coming out in the new year, so don't worry about having a lack of Doctor Who content, because we're going to be providing it at the least once a week, but we can also throw in a couple of extra reviews as well. So hit that subscribe button, like the video, and let's get into this whole video. So, Doctor Who Season 1 has had quite a lot of mixed reviews. The show is at a state at the moment where it's actually more turbulent than the Jodie Whittaker era, because a lot of people could kind of agree with that the Jodie Whittaker era was a dip in the show's history, and if something wasn't done, the show would fade into obscurity and probably get cancelled. But Russell T Davies came back and rebooted the show with a brand new look on the show, and also a bigger budget, and also the worldwide reach that Doctor Who deserves, really. So yeah, why is there so much turmoil in the water of the Doctor Who universe, or the universe as we can really call it, or as technically is its original official name? So yeah, let's go with that. So there is quite a lot of factors in this, but mainly the main reason, well, yeah, let's just go over a couple of things that I've got to say about this new rebooted series of Doctor Who. So, at first, I was very excited for this reboot, and the first things that we did get was the 60th anniversary. Now, although technically this isn't Season 1, I do have to add this in because this was sort of the start. And the 60th anniversary, I think, contains some of the strongest episodes of the Disney Plus reboot. I'm talking mainly about like, really, yeah, all 3 episodes of that had very, very good strong points. So let's go over all of them individually and really, harp on about what things are good about this new era. First of all, that budget increase has definitely helped with a lot of the complaints about CGI and, yeah, basically shit green screen stuff, because, well, none of that's happening anymore. We have very, very good CGI with Doctor Who right now, as proven in the Star Beast. And while Blue Yonder has definitely got some mixed things on the CGI, some people do say that the corridor scenes were a little bit, like, maybe they should have done that a little bit more physically without using green screens, but that is just something that Doctor Who can take and learn from. But I've got to say, it looks a hell of a lot better than a lot of the previous series of CGI, so I'm all for it. Especially the exterior shots. They have really, really upped them exterior shots of spaceships and space stations and planets. They all look really, really good. Another thing that I've got to say is absolutely nailed on with these episodes is the music. I've got to say this is some of the best music that we've had from Doctor Who in a very, very long time. Especially some of the suites from the Giggle and a lot of these different pieces, even the Star Beast and Wild Blue Yonder, all of these pieces do have very, very good music, composed and created by Murray Gold. And yeah, he's came back to Doctor Who, he made some really, really good music in the past for Doctor Who, so of course he was going to live up to the hype on the music side of things. So we got visuals, music, which are really it's inarguably because both of them have improved massively along with the budget, which is kind of to be expected with a bigger budget, but also keeping that Doctor Who-y feel, which I think have done really, really good with that sort of thing. Now, the one thing that I will say is lacking on this, especially in Season 1, is the writing. And I can kind of put this down to mainly Russell T Davies, which is definitely something that I didn't think I would be saying, as when Russell came back to the show, I was very, very excited to have him back in the booth. He had made a bunch of really, really good Doctor Who episodes in the past. You got the entire of Series 4, which is just a masterpiece in itself. But we also have a couple of other writing stuff, which I'm going to get to in a little bit as well, when we get to more Season 1. But yeah, the 60th anniversary specials, I think had a couple of different things in them that I'd like to point out. In every single episode, there seemed to be some focus of, they had to include in every single episode some random focus that sort of covered, either the topics of diversity or inclusion of some, some sort of group, I suppose. And yeah, although I think it's actually very, very good to include, to include a good, fair representation of characters within a show, I definitely don't think that it was done in particularly the right way in some aspects. Now, I think in some ways they were covered a lot better than others, and in some ways I think they were just far too on the nose, and they really, really just looked like they just sort of thought, okay, we need this, this, and this in this episode, and we're going to throw it in here, here, and here, and that's literally how it looked from a writing point of view, which is not very good. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be brutally and bluntly honest on this. I think that some of these pieces actually just brought down the quality of the show for me, because I, as a fan of Doctor Who for many, many years, and a fan of a lot of other shows that actually do this well, and we will get onto examples that do things very, very well in a bit, including Doctor Who in the past, which has done this very, very well. I mean, look at Russell T Davies' hype, his best stuff, Series 3 and Series 4, really, you've got to think, Russell T Davies, his era was very, very good. You've got Series 1, 2, 3, and 4, and all 4 of them series do actually include some good pieces of representation and diversity. I think they do, Martha Jones, who was a black character who essentially was the companion to the Doctor for a good period of time. I think her character was very, very good, massively well loved, and yeah, I think it went down really, really well for with the fans. So yeah, what has changed during then? I've got to say, it's just the writing quality for me that has changed since then. Like, I do think that they could have written it in there a lot better, and there are certain different things that I will actually cover in where it could be written in there a lot better, and where it has been written in there a lot better, even in its own series, which is actually kind of interesting. But yeah, let's continue into this. So yeah, that is the 60th anniversary that we've got sort of covered. Now let's get into season 1 of Doctor Who, and the writing kind of dipped for me a little bit in this series. So, first of all, we got Space Babies, the opener of this series. And we got, obviously, the Christmas special, which was kind of alright at its best. I wouldn't say it's my favourite Christmas special ever. And I wouldn't say it's like the worst Christmas special in television. But I would say it's definitely something that was alright. It was a decent episode of Doctor Who in itself. But I think they had a couple of problems with it. For example, how the killing of the goblins, the Goblin King, like, the whole thing of the Doctor is he doesn't murder, he doesn't kill things, he tries to resolve things as peacefully as possible, and rarely ever comes to this last resort of killing or slaughtering in this case. But for this time, he just kind of pulls the ship down with his anti-gravity gloves, which just kind of fit the plot, I suppose, and it kills the Goblin King, which, what if it went like 20, like, literally, what if it was to miss by a couple of meters and it wouldn't kill the Goblin King, and then it wouldn't have solved the episode. So yeah, there's a lot of things that go to chance at this episode, and that's why I kind of think it was a bit mid. But at the same time, you know, when I was reviewing these episodes, I was coming off the back of this adrenaline straight after the episodes. It's like, Doctor Who's back for Christmas, yes, let's go, and yeah, obviously I gave it a higher rating then. But yeah, looking at it as well, like things like Space Babies, for example, I think Space Babies was good in some points, but also had its bad points as well. Like, the CGI in Space Babies was really, really nice, as I did say, and I think the Bogeyman was such an interesting and good idea, but that was kind of ruined a little bit. I think that the acting could have been a little bit stronger as well from Ncuti's part, once the Bogeyman was sort of getting sucked out. I think that could have been slightly shot a little bit differently as well, just to build up the tension and just have that almost silence and draining, and just this build up this big tension, and then have him come in and save the day at the end. I think that would be much better, and Doctor Who have done this a lot better in the past. Look at scenes from the 10th Doctor, for example, in which this has been portrayed a lot better, and yeah, it just works a lot better. Then we have the ending of basically Space Babies, sort of like that, and I would say the CGI for the mouth movements of the Space Babies as well didn't look great, I'm not gonna lie. The facial expressions don't really match up very well, and yeah, it's just a whole thing in itself. Then we've got the Devil's Cord, which in my opinion was the stronger of the two episodes. We have a drag queen villain in this episode, which is, funny enough, after Russell T Davies made his comments about how he didn't want to make wheelchair users seem evil, and how he didn't want them to play villainous characters such as Davros, which doesn't make that much sense in itself, but I digress. He then cast a drag queen as a villain of the episode, which is kind of an interesting choice, but in this case, I think it worked really, really well. I think the villain was played very, very well, and Jinx Monsoon did a fantastic job at portraying Maestro, And yeah, I think this episode came off very, very well. It was actually one of my favourite episodes of the series. And yeah, I think it's a great episode. My only criticism would be that I think for an episode about the Beatles didn't really make that much of an appearance in it. And I think if they would have added a bit more of the Beatles in them, maybe even included them a little bit more in How to Save the Day, etc. Like, it just kind of came out of nowhere. He played the piano chords and things started to work. Maybe if it was a little bit longer and not as much rushed, I think it would have came out a little bit better. Then, let's go on to Boom. Yeah. Oh yeah, just before I do get on to Boom, the third episode, I would like to say that basically the musical scene I think would have worked a bit better if it was placed earlier on. Maybe if they used the musical scene to defeat Maestro, I think that would have just been a lot more of a better use of the musical scene. It was kind of just shoehorned in at the end there and just kind of thrown in, and it felt really unnatural and unnecessary. And yeah, I wasn't a massive fan of the ending of that episode, but yeah, what can you do? Boom, episode 3. I think Boom was one of the strongest episodes. Funny enough, it's probably one of the cheapest episodes to produce. It had one position, simple storyline, and the great writing of Stephen Moffat. This is a really, really good example of how good writing can make a good story. And the crying from Shooting at World would have probably been a little bit more impactful if he had not cried like 2 times or multiple times in the previous episodes, which, and again, he's a more emotional Doctor, but you definitely need to cut back on how much he cries, because it's definitely gonna ruin the impact of when it actually happens. Because as an audience, if you're exposed to something all the time, then it just becomes less impactful when it does happen. And from a storytelling point of view, definitely need to cut back on it so that it does become more impactful. Look at the 10th Doctor, he barely ever cried until these like little bits where he broke, but when he did, it became a huge emotional moment. Look at like the whole Bad Wolf Bay scene, look at Doomsday, look at the End of Time. Amazing examples of how Russell T Davies smashed a scene like this. But these scenes are not living up to it. But yeah, Stephen Moffat, I do think, did a great job of this episode. Now, let's go on to a couple of the other episodes as well. You've got, for example, you have the... Yeah, so you've got 73 Yards, which I think was a good episode, personally. I enjoyed the episode quite a lot, but I do think that 73 Yards was probably better to be split into 2 episodes. First of all, we had this really unnecessary political part on this episode, which I don't think it was really that necessary. I think this episode would have worked a lot better if it was just a 73 Yards woman and have it more of a haunting episode / sort of more of a horror episode. I think it would have just worked a lot more better as that kind of thing. But as always, the CGI and sets and etc. just all work very, very well. And the fact that this was shot mainly in Wales is just a really, really nice cherry on the top of the cake. We then have Dot and Bubble, which I think was a really, really interesting episode, an experimental episode, which I did like for the most part. But I would say that a lot of people kind of overhyped the last big scene in that episode, where the Doctor was combating the effects of racism, I suppose. But yeah, the first thing is, I didn't think it was sprinkled in and works really, really well on rewatches, because you kind of pick up on the earlier pieces on the rewatches, and I think that works really, really well. I think the fact that Russell said that we were just supposed to pick up these on the first watch is a bit like, it's just a little bit like, well, no we weren't, because they're obviously subtle for a reason of picking up on rewatches. That's kind of the whole point of making something subtle, that you don't pick it up on the first watch and that knowing something later in the plot allows you to look back and pick up on it on a second watch, which is completely fine in my opinion. I think that's a good way to do that, and I think this is an example of where subtlety actually worked well in an episode of this new Doctor Who. So very, very cool. But yeah, I don't think it was an emotional enough scene. I think, yeah, it did feel like a little bit impactful, but the gravity of this whole situation should have been a much, much more dramatically shot scene. I think maybe even if they should have added some slow-mo shots in there, made it super cinematic, really, really dramatic scene, I think that it would have gone down a lot more better. And again, this is another example of Shooty crying. Great, like the whole idea of him crying in the scene, perfect. Really, really good for this scene. Not as good for other scenes. Again, if they wouldn't have done it in these other scenes, maybe this scene would have been a bit more impactful. But yeah, we kind of move on this one. Going to the next episode, which is Rogue. Now, Rogue is actually one of their episodes that I think went really, really well in this sort of thing. I think the writing was much better in this episode, and considering we had a brand new writer on this, I think they understood Doctor Who really, really well. And yeah, this is, again, really, really strong point of the episode. The Rogue character actually reminded me a lot of Captain Jack. And I actually kind of did think maybe this would be another iteration of Captain Jack. But yeah, I love the character. I think the episode was really, really good. And yeah, great episode. Then we go on to the 2-part finale. Now, yeah, this has a couple of big writing plot holes in it that, let's just say some things in the past probably could have solved a little bit better. So, the first thing is with this, I've got to say, let's start off with positives. I think this episode was really, really nicely done. I think the CGI in this episode was great. I think the acting, to an extent, was really, really good in this episode, and also the sets and usage of, sets, etc., was really, really good. I loved the cliffhanger at the end of the first episode as well. Yeah, the whole Sutekh reveal was a really, really cool iteration. No, it was like a really, really cool idea. I think it was great, but I do think they could have maybe done it a little bit more subtly. Just having Sutekh pop up on the screen for no reason other than to look good cinematically is, quite frankly, just kind of poor writing. I think it just doesn't, like, it doesn't work in universe. Like, there's no reason for why Sutekh will pop up on all the screens. It's not like Sutekh can just hack all of the screens for some reason, but not do other things that would keep up with continuity. So yeah, that is kind of an interesting point. And then there's also the fact that Sutekh was on the TARDIS for this entire time, including in the past. So apparently there was a version of Sutekh on every single TARDIS in the past of the entire Doctor's life since his last thing, since his last appearance. Which does raise a few red flags, which means that, you know that episode where Peter Capaldi was sat on top of the TARDIS in Listen? That would mean that Sutekh was rammed up his arse, which, yeah, don't think that makes sense. Don't think that really helps with the idea. And also there's just a bunch of other times as well, like the 50th anniversary. Is there 3 different Sutekhs in the scene in the barn with all 3 TARDISes? Is there just 3 Sutekhs at that point? 3 different Sutekhs? Like, there's a lot of memes I've been seeing online of this, and yeah, it just shows that, yeah, Russell T Davies is definitely kind of, the writing is not as on par as I think it would be back in Series 4 and like the golden era of Doctor Who. And these are a few little things that I don't think he can explain. I just don't think it's going to get explained, which is, yeah, it's not looking good for that point of thing. But obviously, I think it was a decent finale. I really like the usage of certain things and how it wrapped up. I also, contrary to popular belief, I kind of do enjoy the idea of Ruby's parents being kind of nobody. And it does kind of leave the idea open of Ruby's dad, maybe who he would be, but Ruby's mum being kind of a regular person. I kind of like that idea, so really, really good on that one. So yeah, that was basically my thoughts on the main part of this, and yeah, I kind of just went over all the episodes individually and sort of listed my thoughts on the episodes. I did a review recently on Joy to the World, but I will briefly say over a couple of things. Actually, no, I won't, because that is part of Season 2, technically. So, yeah, Season 1 is kind of covered in all bases. Now, the main point of this video is that Doctor Who should focus more on storytelling. I think that they should really take their focus. I know that they want to focus a little bit more on, again, diversity and inclusion, which, yeah, again, important to the film world, but when it is, you know, actively ruining the stories of these episodes and causing for poor writing decisions like, you know, Sutek being on every single TARDIS in the entirety of Doctor Who for the last, you know, bunch of years, I do think that the writing definitely needs some more attention. And there is a lot of things at the moment going around where, you know, it's pretty clear that episodes and films and series of things that are written very, very well and are very focused on the storyline seem to do much better. And I think this is just going back to the classic idea of people love good stories. People love good, quality, well-written films. And we're not getting enough of this in now and day and age because the focus is elsewhere. And here is a couple of good examples which I have actually loaded up with a couple of screenshots on my laptop right here. So the first screenshot that I'm going to show you guys is actually the huge budget that went into Doctor Who. So apparently Russell T Davies clarifies the £10 million per episode budget of the new season of Doctor Who. Now if we do say 9 episodes, that is essentially £90 million of funding. That's a hell of a lot of funding for a series that is performing decently, but nothing insanely. And if you want to get a new audience, which I think Doctor Who is massively banking on at the moment with its Disney Plus release, you know, they want to expand their audience. And I think the way to do this is to focus on good storytelling. A good example of this is the film, very, very popular film, The Batman. And this is still, to this day, my favourite film which has ever been released. I love this film to pieces. It's a really well-made film, and it is also beautifully written and very, very much story-driven. But it does also include plenty of diverse. It has plenty of people of colour in the film, and I think this does really, really outline that well. But also, it doesn't shoehorn them in. It's very, very natural in the film. I think it works very, very well. It's very naturally incorporated into the film, with the story as the main point of interest. And I think films work the best in this way, and we definitely need a lot more of these productions going in, basically being made. And this is one reason why in the future I do want to create my own Doctor Who fan film. It's one thing that I do really want to do. I want to create some Doctor Who stories which are very much focused on the actual physical storytelling elements, and yeah, if I manage to obtain a budget where I was able to create something like this, it would definitely be something that's on my aims of a list of things that I would like to essentially do, because I think that, yeah, the Doctor Who community does definitely need some more of these well-made, well-written stories. So yeah, just a little look at the Batman as well. Just numbers wise, it had funding of 185 to 200 million in its budget, but made at box office literally grossed 771 million, which for a first film is very good, and it shows the success of this film. Now let's compare to a series as well. The Penguin on HBO did amazingly. The episodes were well written, well produced, really good, solid episodes. It's had a massively positive massively positive ratings, to the point where it's literally considered as one of the best TV shows ever made by HBO. Not one of the best made this year, one of the best shows that HBO has ever made. Ever. Yes, that is the level we're talking about with the Penguin here. It also smashed records on IMDb. It became one of, if not the biggest, highest rated thing on IMDb ever, which again shows the people's love for this kind of storytelling and writing. You know, it shows that good writing does really pay off in this whole situation. It also does cover a bunch of different topics and stuff, you know, with corruption within Gotham, the corruption within Gotham, and, you know, things like that as well. Like, it does cover issues that do parallel to, you know, issues in life, I suppose. And, yeah, covers on certain things like that, but it's done in a very natural, well-written way. And Matt Reeves has absolutely smashed this with his Batman universe, and yeah, it shows really well from the numbers. I mean, becoming one of the biggest IMDb ratings ever, staying number one on HBO for the entirety of its run is insane. And it's one of the big reasons why I am really looking forward to the Batman Part 2. And even though it's going to take a long time, good things do take time. And I know, as a fan, that this film is going to be really well written, really well made, and yeah, everything that you would want it to be. So yeah, that is basically this whole video on here. The final message is Doctor Who should focus on storytelling more. They can obviously include, and should include, plenty of, within episodes, should definitely include plenty of, examples of diversity and inclusion. Every show should, and most of them do, to be completely fair with you. It should just be written a lot better and naturally into the storyline, so that it's not blatantly obvious what you're trying to do from a fan standpoint. And I'm saying this as a fan of Doctor Who. I love the show. I have done since I was younger, and of course, if you love something so much and you enjoy something so much, you're gonna obviously want the best for that show. But yeah, that's basically the end of this whole video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please comment, like, and subscribe as usual, and I'll see you all in the next video. Peace.